Pretty much everything in this world is measured by use of a scale or anything in this world. Like if let's say you want to measure height, you would measure it on a scale of either meters, feet, inches, or let's say if you want to measure weight, would you measure it on kilos or would you measure it in pounds? And so each and everything in this world pretty much has a scale to it on which you derive the ranking and in which you measure someone and then you compare people. Let's say in your exams you kind of do the ranking with the marks and the grades you get, and when it comes to models they have gait and they have multiple various factors on which they rank the models. And so each and everything in this world which we care about has a ranking to it so that we can compare them and care more about them. Now when it comes to humans, the most important fact on which we measure, on which we scale our day-to-day lives, on which we scale people is one and only single thing, which is money. And we don't love to accept it, that we kind of see people and we kind of respect people and we kind of look down at people just at the factor of how much money they have. And that's why in the previous video I said that money is not a factor that you want to leave alone from your life, but you also don't want to make it your purpose and make it your sole meaning in life. Anyways, what I wanted to say is this video in the same place was filmed almost an year ago, and this video is supposed to be my anniversary video. I'm just a month late or something like that. But the reason why this video matters is because I was with huge aspirations making the previous video, sitting in the same place in my mom's house, and I was thinking differently, and I just dared enough to make that first video. And if you give the monetary scale to me, that how much Aryan, how much have you progressed in a year, okay, and the scale is money, then I must say 0, because I haven't made any money. Let me be honest. And even if I made, it just went away. So the revenue is equal to the kind of expenses I have, and so eventually the churn is more and blah blah blah, and essentially I made 0. So the important factor that we are here to discuss is that is money everything when it comes to the scale of measurement. And so this comeback I made, or even if I made a comeback, because on the scale of money I am a useless animal right now. And so I haven't grown at all. I haven't been at the place I wanted to be, and I set this vague goals which I did not achieve. So then, Aryan, did you even improve in a year? And that's the question I asked to myself, and I was sitting here trying to record this video, trying to write the things about this video. And was that we humans actually measure on the scale of money. And the way the scale of money works is because your respect, how you treat people, how you look at people, whether you will listen to them or not, whether you will ignore them, whether you will listen to them very carefully, each and everything, your societal status, your respect, each and everything that human cares about when it comes to external validation, or even when it comes to your suffering, it depends pretty much on the scale of money. Where do you stand on the scale of money? And so life just becomes a lot easier when you have money, especially when it comes to external validation. And that's why I told you at some point in money, external validation would not satisfy you, and that's why you need to look into yourself. Anyways, that's another topic. Today we are here to discuss that if I haven't improved at all, then what is this progress we name at all, right? Or is there even any progress, or I just haven't moved at all in a year? Okay. So if you see the same video, the first video on this channel, which is pretty much the same angle and the same way, and I'm sweating in the same way, you'll realize my articulacy is very bad. The way I speak English at that point was pretty weird, and I used to think about the words I had to speak, and now it just naturally flows at times. I fumble around, but still it just naturally flows at times. And in that video which I made at the very first time, I was just blindly recording, and I had to cut many times and I had to repeat the thing many times. Now I just do this raw videos in one take. And so a little bit improvement in the articulacy and a little bit improvement in the way I use my tongue and the way my muscles have been connecting with my brain. Okay, now why does this matter? When you speak in the world, when you say things around, you want to completely fumble every time. Okay, I used to fumble a lot back then, and now at least I'm fumbling a lot lesser, and I have improved when it comes to my articulacy. When I'm speaking to someone, I don't get nervous and I just I don't do that anymore. I mean, I might do that, but not a lot of times, and it's less frequent now. Okay, so what we are here to discuss is, if according to our equation of progress, if money is the only scale we measure on, then I haven't progressed at all, and I haven't become something greater at all. And I'm not the Uberman or I'm not the Superman if I haven't progressed in a year. The thing is, I have progressed, and I don't want to be narcissistic and I don't want to judge myself. But when I look at the video, when you guys will look at the first video, you'll see a major change, which is me, myself, the physique. You'll see myself, the way I speak. You'll see that how I'm changing the views that I had earlier, how I am shifting from one point to another, how I'm kind of driving myself to the next point of life, and how I have a meaning now. Okay, and so what I'm trying to say is there was a comeback, okay, but on the scale you might not have seen the physical improvements because I am sort of detaching myself from all of those external validations. Still, money matters. I say it again and again because somewhere or the other your suffering can get way less when you have money. Okay, so the basicest suffering that you have right now in your life would just run out if you have enough money. And so you won't ever face those shitty ass problems that you might have faced right now or you might have faced in the past if you have money. And that's why money becomes really important. But at the same time, external validation, which completely derives your scale, and then on that scale you derive your entire societal status and your external validations, and that satisfies a certain void in you. That's very dangerous. And when it comes to the other points, right, which are other than your external validation, which is other than the money, which is other than the suffering, there's a lot. And the thing which I'm talking about, which is a lot, is the meaning. And today we are going to, I have just derived it, me and ChatGPT came up with the theory of comeback. We combined Nietzsche and we combined Carl J. Jung, and we just combined them, right? And we came up with the theory of comeback. Now the thing is that when you fall in downfall, or when you are in the darkness, when you're in the trenches, when you're at the lower side of your life, life looks pretty piteous, and life looks pretty sad and sorrow, and you know, you understand that dark aesthetic where you are just crying all the day and that emotional music playing by. That's your life pretty much before the major comeback starts or the theory of comeback kicks in. And so you are pretty much done with your life, and that's because Nietzsche says the will isn't there, there's no meaning, and then you have forgotten the path. And Jung says that you don't know what your shadow wants and you don't have any control over your shadow. So it's pretty much many times that your unconscious kind of controls you off, and you don't even know the stuff you are doing, and you don't even know why the stuff you are doing and what's the point behind them. And so the stage one, which becomes very important, is the insight, which is to know yourself, okay? Because there are at some kind of invisible blockers in your life, invisible blockers in the way you can move ahead, and that would be the major reason of your downfall. Now the insight is learning new information, learning about yourself, writing down the things that you might think that have made a major setback in your life, the things that you were doing constantly. Now you need to go back there and you need to ask, why was I doing them? Will they have affected me? And can they affect me in future if I continue them? Okay, so when you go through these questions, you do a Socratic discussion or you do a dialect with them, and then you realize that there were many things that you were doing wrong. There were many things which you thought were right and they were wrong. And then you realize there were so many things which I thought were wrong. I stopped them, but actually they were helping me progress. But I stopped them. So eventually these were the reasons why my setback started. And then you start to eliminate the bad points. You start to double down on the points which made you stronger, which made you progress even more. And that's the way you get that insight as to what you want. And when you look in the eye, I wrote this down, that you realize that you are not destroyed, and instead you expose yourself to yourself. How do I say that? Insight, when Jung says insight, he means that you are kind of judging your unconscious consciously. So we are cognitively thinking about what my unconscious is going for again and again, what my unconscious needs are, what my unconscious mind thinks about. I am thinking that cognitively and I'm eliminating them. Because according to Jung, when you have multiple various stuff going on in your life, and when you name it, so let's say, you remember the scene in Conjuring 2 where the villain's name, or the what do we call, the demon's name is Velek. And when you say the Velek's name to the demon, the nun, whatever she is, she disappears and goes back to hell. Well, the reason why this works is because when you identify the name, when you identify one, what is wrong, and second, you name them, you realize what was the behind going concept with it. So let's say you were doing this particular thing which you thought was pretty cool, but actually it was just a falsification of your confidence. Or let's say it was just your fear calling you out. Or let's say it was just your social anxiety which you were naming as introvertness. You feeling? So there were many things which you have named differently, but when you identify them by using your insight, which is judging your unconscious consciously, which is cognitively thinking about what are the things which are going on in my unconscious mind, I bring them down on a pen and paper, and then I eliminate them one by one, and then I realize by naming them that, oh, I was doing it this way and I thought it held me really, I thought I was happy, but it was just me coping up with the depressed life I had. It was just me coping up from the death I had of someone, and I thought I was happy, but no, I thought smoking a cigarette was making me happy. But the thing is, I was coping with this fear within me that they will go away from my life, or this girl just left me. I was in a void of love, and that void got covered by drinking. And so there will be many things which your unconscious and conscious do it together, and when you judge them, and when you name them that this is the reason why I was doing this, you'll be very easily able to eliminate them. And that's why I even wrote one more word, is that now that you have seen the truth, what will you do with it? Now as you have seen the truth, you will see them, you will eliminate them, and you'll stop doing them. And we will double down on the things which we stopped and which were right and which were making you progress a bit more towards your meaning and towards your path and XYZ, right? Now comes the stage 2. Now, stage 2 is all about courage, all about reclaiming that flame within you. Now, the thing why setback hurts is because, one, you're misjudging whatever your unconscious wants, and whatever your unconscious wants, you are just fulfilling them, and you don't even know what you are doing. And that's why you keep on doing the stuff which eventually is going you more and more, throwing you down the loophole of downfall, and you are just getting depressed day by day. But at the same time, your courage is getting decreasing. It's just your drive, your passion, your flame is just sort of fading away day by day. And so it becomes very important that you look at yourself clearly, and you realize that now is the time to act, because here is where the absurdity concept comes, here where Albert Camus and his absurd hero comes, because Sisyphus just pushed the boulder even though he knew it was meaningless, but he found that thing within the suffering that, yeah, he needs to still exist. Now, that's why Albert Camus said this, that should I have a cup of coffee or should I kill myself? And he prefers to have a cup of coffee, because that's what courage is. When you're walking down a meaning, when you are usefully attaching yourself to a particular thing which you have cleared by your insight, now you're very clear about it, and now you're judging things very clearly around you. You're judging how you are kind of deriving to a concept, how you are derivating your life, how you're deciding the things in your life. And then when you go back and when you start building that courage, that flame within you, now is the point where you kind of get back on that path. Now you're accelerating on that path. And that's where another thing comes is that why did the absurd hero go on with his life? Because he knew that life isn't about shouting around, and life isn't about being happy, but life is about just existing and don't care attitude. And so what comes is, despite that there's no meaning to life, through the insight clearance and through my own thoughts and through my own creative art process that I had in my head, I created my meaning, which I am ready to do anything for, and that will be the meaning why I exist in this world. And so it is the will to exist despite of the meaninglessness of this universe and the meaninglessness of your existence in this world. And that's where the existentialism and the absurdism and the nihilism and everything just blows away. Okay, so we'll talk about them in some different video, but the point we are here trying to discuss is courage is actually saying yes to the absurdity, saying yes that yeah, there's pain and suffering, but I will still choose to exist. I will still move on with the life, and I will still create a meaning, and then I'll try to fulfill that meaning, and I'll try to walk on that path which I know would be hard, which I know would have suffering, which I know would at some point just seems vague to me, but I'll still do it because that is the reason I exist, and that is the reason I pick up the another cup of coffee instead of killing myself. And so Hume once again says is that courage is actually integration of your shadow with, which is your unconscious, with your conscious. And so what happens is now shadow becomes your ally, which is your unconscious, which was your shadow sort of now is walking with you. Instead of he deriving your path, he is with you now, and you both goes towards one thing. And so it is integration. And so you no longer hide your past, you learn from it and you move along with it, and you're sort of flaming down that path. You are just rushing, and now your scars sort of start to shine, and then you move with conviction, and now you have focus, and now you have meaning, and now you have that flame and the passion to go for. Okay, now comes the third point. Okay, now the thing is, you usually do the inside part may be correct. Okay, you maybe go to a psychologist, you maybe do some therapy sessions, you maybe look after yourself, you maybe start journaling, you maybe go through some books, and then you know what insight is, and maybe you do the stuff for 2 or 3 days, so you now have the courage, you are ready to move on, you're getting out of that sort of depression part. But the third thing is where the actual importance is, and that is the thing that made me the person I am right now. Even though on the monetary scale of this world and external desires, I might be nowhere. And I know it's important to have money and to validate the external desires and lessen the suffering. But at the same point, it's very important that the internal growth that I had that one factor, which is endurance. And that is the third factor of the comeback theory. And how does endurance work? Is that you will have to continue that fire essentially again and again. You don't have to let it die. You don't have to again stop getting your insight. You don't have to fall behind with your courage going down, and you don't have to stop showing up again and again, which is essentially what would make you go through that comeback and get back in your life essentially, and you'll forget the depressed part and setbacks in your life. Now, the endurance is actually not waiting for the time to get better. It's actually going through that path and actually loving yourself, and what the fuck am I saying? Not loving yourself, but what I'm trying to say is existing through the pain, through the suffering, and understanding that this would exist, and that's the absurdity of life. And so you'll realize that you'll fall, you'll rise, and then again you'll fall. But the thing is, every time you rise again, you would be a different person than the one who fell. So the thing is, it's not about constant recovery, and it's not about constantly upgrading. It's about rebirth, which will occur at certain duration, when you'll suddenly look in the mirror and you'll feel like, oh fuck, I'm different. And that happened to me when I was looking back at some of my videos, and I used to think like, oh my god damn, Aryan, you are different. And that happens, that hits, that it's not this slowish progress. Now when I look at it, oh, I am getting a rebirth now. I'm getting another resurrection in my life. I'm just born as a new person. And boom, it looks cool, it sounds cool, and it is cool when you apply the first 2 steps, and then you endure through that pain and suffering, and you admit to the absurdity, and that is when you know why you exist, with the meaning. And so equals to, therefore it equals to this huge equation, is that essentially to come out of your any kind of setback, downfall, depression, dark periods of your life, you one will have to take a good insight of you yourself. You will have to know and name the things, identify what made you do that stuff, why were you unconsciously deriving to one thing. And then second is to make your shadow your ally, which is to integrate whatever your insights were, and then to attach your courage with it, which is to essentially consciously just get out of that setback phase, to work on it again and again, day by day, try to improve yourself, and try to know that there will be meaninglessness, try to understand that there will be this vagueness about meaning, and then there will be no meaning at the end of the day, because life doesn't provide you one, but you create one for yourself through your art, creativity, and through your passion, and then that's the way you go ahead. But at some point you will feel like stopping down, and that's where endurance comes in, is that you have to do it again and again. You have to rise and fall, and essentially there will be that resurrection period where you'll be rebirth again, when we'll be reborn, what the fuck am I saying, when you'll born again in this world, and with a new form and sort of a different person at all. Okay, and so even if everything collapses again, you will be able to start everything from the scratch as you rebuild it again. And so this is the main point of this entire comeback theory is, let's say something vague happens, because life is absurd. And as I said, there will be something called as fate, which doesn't depend on God, but there will be something in your life which you won't be able to control. And that's why Nietzsche says, amor fati, which is to love your fate, that something happens, it just happens. And so you will have to count for the unknown factor, but at the same time you need to realize that if something bad happens and if you go back down to the setback, now you will be able to rebuild it from the scratch because you have gone through that path. You know, when it comes to building abs, it said that if you build the abs one time, you know that path towards abs, you know what you will have to eat, you know what you will have to exercise to get that abs again. And that's why it becomes very simple to get the abs another time if you lose them once. Maybe because you had to eat your mom's food when you were on a vacation, not me, but you understand, right? And so it becomes very important to understand that endurance and this entire comeback theory, if you go through it one time, you will be able to go through it again if the fate kicks your ass. And that's why this is where you actually transform. And now I have the final lines which me and ChatGPT created together, and it's pretty beautiful if you see it, to this entire conclusion of theory of comeback is: when insight burns illusions, when courage breaks paralysis, when endurance outlasts despair, you don't return to who you were, you transcend who you were. And that's it. And so what the last line meant is, you transcend from that version of who you were in past to something new, right? You understand the entire line. And then Nietzsche, the most beautiful line that you heard in each and every song, I mean, I heard it in song which you heard many times in your life, and you don't know where that line came from. It was from Nietzsche. And let me say this to you: the wound is where the power enters. What does not kill me makes me stronger. Remember that. And then that's with everything about the theory of comeback. And essentially, I made a comeback when it comes to physical health, when it comes to knowing about my health and knowing about me more and understanding what my unconscious decisions were, coming out of the insane amount of lust I had last year, coming out of the insane amount of despair and this sort of feeling which I was just a dumb person is now gone away. And now I'm confident. I just speak up the things I want to speak, and then I do the things according to my way. And maybe there were a few things that I could have improved even more this year, but we always have time. And if you are improving a bit, that means you are improving. And that's the entire theory of comeback. One, let's repeat it again so that it engraves it in your head, and start it today itself. Insight, then second, courage, and third, endurance. The thing is, don't give the time to insight, because many times it happens that you just learn more and more about you and yourself, but never get the courage enough to do the things you have to do, and you never do them constantly enough so that it compounds, right? And so the thing is, all of these three steps are equally important, but remember, don't give all of your time to one step and forget about the other steps, because that would just entirely mess up the theory of comeback. And so what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. You are an absurd hero. There's no point killing yourself and creating insane amount of repression and depressed way of confidence and kind of looking at yourself as a face down way. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, you look in the mirror and you don't feel like looking at yourself, Get out of that feeling, learn about yourself, and then the time will be to build the courage to act upon them, to be the ally with your conscious, to learn more about it, to improve it, and then to endure through the pain and suffering and become the uber man, the superman. That's it. And remember, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And remember, you don't have to do the philosophical or either the physiological suicide. It's what you need to do is get another cup of coffee and go through the theory of comeback. That's it for this video. That was the anniversary video I gave, and all I had with the sweat and tears actually. And so yeah, we have improved and we'll keep improving again and again. And thank you for all the subscribe and likes that you have been doing. I just love if someone comments. So please comment down and tell me what you want next. Bye. That's it.